Dawn is still an hour away. While most are sleeping, some are at work. Around Australia, these nocturnal creatures carry out a daily ritual. At the racetrack, it's business as usual, rain or shine. Ordinary horses and champions alike are going through their paces. Watching every stride are their trainers. They peer into the darkness at silhouettes galloping in the distance. At some point in their life, each of this hardy breed of people were bitten by the bug. Now, racing is in their blood. To the uninitiated, a trainer's jargon is foreign. They speak of horses being green. They can hang, lug, and roar. Working on their wrong leg is cause for concern. They say these people are chasing a dream, but really, that's a part of it. Racehorse trainers need to have the logic of an engineer, the curiosity of a psychiatrist, and the patience of Job. Knowledge is gained here on the racetrack, not from any book. Just looking at a horse can reveal so much. Training is an enjoyable pursuit. After all, it starts with a love of the horse. Over the last 4 decades or so, Australian racing has produced some outstanding trainers, but none better than Bart Cummings, Colin Hayes, and Tommy Smith. Their record-breaking achievements set them apart. They possess a natural affinity with the horse, each gifted with that enigmatic sixth sense. They possess that elusive winning formula. Bart Cummings, Colin Hayes and Tommy Smith have been the pace-setters of modern Australian racing. Combined, they represent a trio of horsemen, the calibre of which we are unlikely to witness again in the same generation. This is their story of success. 3 champion thoroughbred racehorse trainers who have dominated Australian racing.
This was a special day in Australian racing history. It was Tulloch's last race, the last hurrah for a champion who, like Farlow, became a yardstick for all that followed. The public idol who had cheated death was farewelled by thousands. Normally, Tulloch's flamboyant trainer Tommy Smith would have shared the spotlight with his champion, but not on this occasion. He appeared to seek solitude, a time perhaps for reflection.
My first memory would be about when I was about 5-year-old, because I could ride a pony, and naturally my father was offside all the time. If he went anywhere, he'd have me riding this pony. And I was brought up on work. I wasn't brought up on anything, I'd only work. And when I was about 7 or 8, I could work like a man. I could do a man's work. I used to get up at 5 o'clock and muster the horses and bring them in. I was never home much. I never had much home life. And I always mixed with men. See, I never had any much fun with other kids. I always sort of mixed with men. Well, you had no one to talk to, only the horses. A horse is a great friend.
Rural Australia was a rugged place in the 1920s. The Great Depression was looming. Conditions were harsh everywhere. Outback New South Wales was no exception.
We only had a tent. And they built a shack there. The other fellow built a shack there. We had dirt floors. And the water, you see, they didn't have any water in Bulgaria those days. They used to come out by train. They used to bring it out from Griffiths by train. And if you wasn't first over there and got your tank and everything filled up, you wouldn't have any.
Rearing a brood of children in those bread and dripping times was difficult for Tommy's mother.
Oh, she had a cruel life. Working 7 days a week, never had a holiday in her life, and looking after 7 kids. And see, rations, food was very hard to get too. We used to have rabbit twice a week, boiled rabbit and then baked rabbit.
Doing a man's work as a child left little time for an education. The brief time Tommy did spend at school was tough going.
It was the first day I went there, I had a fight. I got locked up in a corner for about half an hour by one of the nuns, and all they could do was belt you, you know, because kids thought, you know, when you go to those places they could push you around, but they forgot that I was a little kid that would with men all the time. If you didn't stand up for your rights, they would be putting your head in the sand. But they could never put my head in the sand, and the kids only lasted a fortnight.
In those days, Tom's father trained a pony or two and raced them at the local picnic meetings.
So he puts me on this horse, and naturally, Dad's King should have been 2-1 on, and I think he was about even money or something, because this kid, I was only big as a match. I was terrible small. Anyhow, Dad's King jumped out and he just bolted in.
Tommy had ideas of becoming a jockey. Not here in the bush, though. In the city. That's where the money was.
All I wanted to do was get away from home. I had my mind made up when I was 10-year-old. I said, that's enough. If I can get away, I will go.
To do that, he needed money. He made a handy profit when he bought 4 horses for 2 shillings, then sold one to the local rodeo for £3.
They put the horse in the show. We got a free ticket, but he wouldn't buck under the lights. When they put the lights, he just stood still. He wouldn't budge. He was a failure. But he'd buck out in daytime, but he wouldn't buck at night. So I told Dad about it. He said, what did you have with the money? I said, I got it in the pocket. He said, he said, lend it to me and I'll give it you when I go home. He said, but instead of that, he got down to a game. He used to like playing the game 2-up. They had a 2-up school at Griffiths. You no need to worry. He lost it between drinking and gambling, and I never got the money.
Tommy was now even more determined to escape. On a cattle run, he got another chance.
But I had a beautiful stop whip I got off a chap. And the kid that had this calf, he said, he wanted my whip, see? No, I said, no. So I gave him the whip for the calf. So when I got the calf and when I got home, Dad said, where's your whip? Because he used to use it. I said, I gave it for this calf. Well, he went berserk. But he didn't know that at the Gulgara, they used to cart the wheat in there. And I used to go around and rats would be, or the mice would eat a hole in the bag. If they didn't, I would punch a hole in the bag. And I used to give the calf boiled wheat. He was that fat. So I sold him a couple of pounds so I gave it to Mother. And that's how I got my fare away. And when I said to him, look, I want to leave home, he said, well, I told you. He said, you've got to get the money. I said, I've got the money and I've got the ticket. I'll never forget the father said to me, he said, you'll be back. I said, I'll never return. I said, I don't care what happened, you'll never see me back again. I got on that train, by Jesus, talk about an awful journey. No.
Bert Lilly was a racing journalist with the Sydney Morning Herald for more than 40 years. He was there when Tulloch won the Brisbane Cup.
Tommy had a tear in his eye when Tulloch won the Brisbane Cup, overcoming the big illness, the defeat in the Sydney Cup. And it was probably his last run, but there was a tear in his eye. Tommy rarely showed emotion.
By 1961, Smith was dominating Sydney racing. He'd won the premiership 9 seasons on end. His tally of wins included 8 derbies and a Melbourne Cup. Back then, few people knew what had motivated TJ to succeed. Tommy's sister Gladys ran the store with her husband for many years. She remembers a letter Tommy sent from Melbourne.
I think he sent a photo home when he got his first suit and things like that, you know. I suppose we were proud and he was proud. And his parents, I suppose, were proud then. You forget about that.
Tommy returned to Sydney in search of better opportunities. But Randwick was full of young strappers, all dreaming of fame and fortune as a jockey. At one stable, Tommy had a run-in with the foreman.
This day he said to me, you know, we're here. He said, you've got to go down and work and dig up the garden, you know. He said, we plant the stuff here. I said, no, I'm not doing it. This foreman bloke said, if you don't do it, he said, I'll sack you. I said, you don't need to sack me because I'm leaving. Can you do it yourself? If you want to do it, you do it, but I'm not doing it. I come to be apprentice, but I didn't get apprentice. That's what I said. I was so light. The only thing I wanted to do was be a jockey. I didn't want to do anything else, only a jockey.
Randwick trainer Max Sawyer gave Tommy his chance.
I had quite a lot of rides, but only I used to 33-1 pops, never got on And I just couldn't ride. If I could have rode, I suppose I would have made the grade, because I had the willpower, but I didn't have that knack.
But Tommy had an affinity with horses, which Max Sawyer realised. He offered him a training job on his property at Cootamundra, which Tommy accepted. It was here that Tommy took a liking to a rogue Brumby and fetched him down from the hills.
When they had this Brumby horse running around the station there, no one could ride him. I started messing around with him. I had him there for about 2 months and couldn't handle him. But I used to choke him down and put a rope around his neck and choke him down, then put the saddle on him. And would he buck? But I could always ride a buck pretty good. So I finished up getting on him. But by geez, he used to tickle me up. But he never threw me. I mastered him in the long run, then I started working him, and I found out he could go pretty good.
Tommy and his bush Brumby then headed for Sydney. The Brumby, which Smith called Bragger, was a wild horse from the word go.
Well, the first trial he had, he threw the jockey that high and finished up. He jumped out of the gate about 6 foot high at Victoria Park and got out to La Perouse. And I thought, oh, bugger, I'm finished.
Not quite. Smith persevered, and Bragger eventually made it to the races.
And I thought he had a good chance of winning. I thought, no, he'll run a place for sure. And I raked up a few quid, about 20 pounds, which is a lot, and I put it each way. I thought, now, he'll sure to run a place. You know where he ran? He ran absolutely last. Oh, absolutely last.
Still, TJ persisted with the rogue horse. In March 1942, he entered Bragger for a race at Rosehill.
I had about £3, and it cost me £3.10, I think $7 to run him, and I didn't have enough money, so I thought, no, I'll go to the game, which I used to live on. I'd go to the game 2 up 3-4 nights and play it in the daytime. So I get the 2 up, and it's about 12 o'clock at night time, and I got about 40 cents left. So I gave the 40 cents, and I turned it into about £7. That's $14, is it? 14, whatever it is. And I left about 3 in the morning. Got home and got up about 5 o'clock and took Bragger to the track. We landed the race, and the time I paid the $7 to run him, I had the rest to put on him. No one would listen to me. They said, oh, this bloke, you know, the horse is a Brumby and he doesn't know. And he won.
And Bragger won his next 3 starts, with Smith betting up big.
And when he won the last day, I won about 70,000 on him.
Soon after, Bragger broke down. Smith had no option but to spell his only horse.
And then I thought, well, damn it, Bragger's got to go out for 6 months. I'll have 6 months good life. So I used to have a hired car. I'd go to a nightclub and I'd walk out and I'd have the hired car to get into, and I'd go out. Then I shifted myself into a lovely flat unit, and I sure lived a great life. I went to Brisbane and Melbourne, but I lost a lot. When Bragger came back in, I had no money.
Broke again, Tommy called on Bragger for one more favour.
A couple of days later, I said, now I'll just set to work, I'll get some money. I'll set old Bragger. So I gave him a couple of nice runs and just poked around. And I set him for race, and he won at 14 to 1, and I got a hatful of money. And from that day on, I've never been broke. I said, I'll never go broke again.
TJ had arrived. Bert Lilly can recall his first impression of the young trainer.
Brash, knew how to chase a dollar. He knew where he was going, I must say that. Tommy set himself goals and he never deviated.
Around this time he met a young lady he would later marry. But the future Mrs. Smith didn't share all of Tommy's dreams.
When I first met him, he said, I've got 3 things I want to get in life. One's to marry you. I said, well, forget that, because you never do that. The second one is to own a home in the best part of Sydney, and the third one is to own a Rolls Royce. I said, well, the other 2 you may get, but you'll never get the first.
With each winner he trained, Smith's confidence grew. So too the number of horses in his care. He needed more stables.
Everyone thought you couldn't buy Tulloch Lodge. So I just met my wife at the time, and she said, I know this woman that owns these stables. Her daughter went to school with me, Mrs. Marsden. So cheeky me, I rang her up. And she said, yes, I would like you to come over. So I drove over. I got a big car by then. And I drove over and spoke to her, and she said, yes, I will sell the stables. But she said, I'm not going to sell them to Alan Potter, which he was AJC chairman. That's how I had a falling out with him. He only wants to give me £2,000 for them. But she said, I think they're worth more than that. I said, how much do you want for them? She said, I'll take £3,500. I said, you got it. She nearly fell off the seat. She said, how are you going to pay for them? I said, righto, tomorrow morning I will have the money. We went and got the money and put it in the bank, paid a cheque, and everyone that ran was shocked. Then I had to give quite a notice to get out.
TJ then went on a buying spree at the English sales.
So one day at the sales on at Eastern, I said to my brother Dick, which was very close to me, and I said, only one way we can really get it going, to go down and buy about 10 or 15 horses. I said, we'll go down and buy a dozen at least. So, gee, he said, how are we going to keep them? I said, well, I've got plenty of money. We must be able to pick a couple of winners out of them. So I bought 15, I think I bought about 15 horses, and I had bought about 10 horses before lunchtime.
The auctioneer doubted Smith's ability to pay for the horses.
He said to me, he said, who are you buying these horses for? I said, I'm buying them for myself. He said, well, how are you going to pay for them? I said, I will pay you out of my pocket, because I've got about £10,000 in my pocket now, so I can give it to you if you want it now. And he nearly fell over. You know what, I sold all those horses in 24 hours, and that started me off.
However, a few years later, TJ bought a yearling he couldn't find an owner for, so he raced it himself. In 1949, Playboy won the AJC Derby with George Moore in the saddle.
Playboy made me. He really got me going, and then really people started to give me horses to train. He was the horse that got the people around me.
Tommy Smith is a young man. He was a huge gambler. See, I can recall a couple of times that Tommy had £50,000 on horses, and that was unheard of in those days. And they won. They won. See, he had Playboy in the Derby, and they all thought he was crazy. Anyway, he kept backing Playboy all the time, and Playboy won the Derby as a maiden. George Moore rode him, and I don't know whether I'm telling stories out of school, it doesn't matter much now anyway, but I'd say that Tommy collected about £150,000 on the Playboy result.
Playboy was the first of 35 Derby winners TJ has trained, an amazing world record in the Blue Ribbon Classic for 3-year-olds.
You've got to have the feeling that you know you got the horse. And when you find it, you might have a young horse as a 2-year-old, and you say, gee, this will make a Derby horse. So straight away you start cuddling.
Without doubt, the best of Tommy's Derby winners was the mighty Tulloch. The champion won 3 Derbies in his classic year.
Well, I don't think there was ever a horse in this country could have beat Tulloch at the time. See, he did cut 2.5 seconds with a far-lapse record in the Derby and won by about 6-8 lengths, and he was pulled up at the winning post when the others caught up with him.
In 1958, Tulloch was struck down by a mystery illness. With his champion at death's door, Smith called on the services of his vet, Percy Sykes.
I walked in and Percy was turned to Tommy. He was there and he said, look, I've got to put the horse down. He can't keep him going any longer. So Tommy said, don't do it. I couldn't bear it while I'm here. So he said, come on, we'll go. So we went off and went up to the pub and had a few drinks. Then we went back to Tommy's for dinner that night. And it was the phone, and he said, if it's Percy, I don't want to talk. And I answered the phone. It was Percy Sykes. And Percy asked Tommy for permission for 24 hours, just 24 hours more for Tulloch. And he gave him that 24 hours. Of course, Tulloch recovered and gradually got better and went on to win all these races.
I can always remember the stresses of bringing him back after he'd been sick all that length of time, but it did get to Tommy a little bit. In fact, I think he was very emotional when he won first up after all that long layoff of 18-odd months.
Well, he was never the Tulloch he was as a 3-year-old. I always reckon he was 3 kilos below, and he still went on and won all those races. He beat horses like Lord, he won the Cox Plate, and he record. I think he ran a track record.
Tulloch and Doligiri, the 3 of them locked together on the home turn now with a little more than a furlong to go, and Tulloch hit the front. Tulloch's the lead apart the furlong post from Doligiri, breaking for the run in now, 3/4 of a furlong to go. Tulloch and Doligiri fighting it out, not an inch between them. Doligiri won't give in. The champion's got his head in front, and he'll win it. Tulloch wins the Cox Plate.
Tulloch, the hero, was back. Former Moonee Valley chairman Bill Stutt remembers the day.
It was a record crowd for Moonee Valley. I forget what it was, something in the 40s, 45,000, so they were jammed in. And the crowd loved to see a champion win, and the excitement after the event was intense. There were, in those days, everyone wore hats, of course, so there were hats all over the place. It was a wonderful atmosphere, and I can still see the smile on TJ's face.
20 years later, Smith produced another champion, Kingston Town. Among the King's 13 Group 1 victories were 3 consecutive Cox plates.
I never thought I'd ever get another horse like Tulloch, but that Kingston Town really surprised me. He really went quick, and by geez, he was good, because he was lame all through his career, and he won all those races and he ran track records. See, I always reckon champions got to run track records, and he used to smash them.
On the turn, and Kingston Town cruised up to our Paddy Boy, took the lead. In the centre, Prince Ruling, and then Yurtiz and Waitangarua. But the real Kingston Town's going to street them, and Kingston Town's gone on to win by 4 lengths. Second, Prince Ruling. Kingston Town raced to Lorman from Silver Bounty. It's Kingston Town, Lorman in front. Kingston Town wearing him down. He'll win. The $1 Million Man's won it. Kingston Town flashing. He might win yet, the champ. Grosvenor took the lead off. Kingston Town swamping them. What a run. Kingston Town wins it next to Grosvenor.
The Cox Plate has been a great race for Smith. When the champion 3-year-old Red Anchor won in 1984, it was TJ's 7th success in Australia's greatest weight for age race. Yet another record. One of those 7 Cox Plate winners was Gunsynd. The Goondiwindi Grey was a crowd favourite wherever he went, a showman, an entertainer, like his trainer.
I think if you could say that a man and a horse had something in common, TJ, he was great for the media, great for the press, was always ready, would always answer a question, was always ready for a photograph, whatever. He was always, that was part of his makeup, TJ. And Gunsynd was the same.
It's Longfellow and Gunsynd on the turn together from Monufik and Allshot. Longfellow's gone. It's Gunsynd in front with Allshot coming at him from Monufik. Gunsynd's under the whip, but he's holding Allshot. Allshot trying hard, but the great grey Gunsynd in front. He's too good. What a champion. The crowd roars and Gunsynd wins a length to Allshot.
Roy Higgins is just one of the many jockeys to have ridden winners for Smith. Over the years, the little general has been associated with some of the greats. With George Moore, he had a tremendously successful, but at times tempestuous partnership.
George Moore and Tommy Smith was the greatest racing combination there's ever been. There'll never be another one like it. Their record proves that. And strangely enough, their temperament made it that way, because they were both fiery. They both used to get upset at each other very quickly. They go off like an atomic bomb.
Well, Moore was just gifted to be a great jockey. He was born to be a jockey. Had great feeling for horses. Horses would just bolt the ball. If I had George Moore today, I wouldn't have him at the track. I would just keep him away from the track, because when he got to the track, he would drive you mad. Because most horses, you'd have a horse in there and think it could win, and he'd be trying to say there's something wrong with it.
Currently regarded as the best jockey in Australia, Mick Dittman has also had his moments with Smith.
Well, I've had a few tests with him over a period of time. He'll say what he thinks, but he forgets about it quickly. You know, you can have an argument with him today, and then tomorrow he's just back to normal business.
In the 70s, Malcolm Johnston was the pin-up boy of Sydney racing. He took on the job of #1 rider at Tulloch Lodge when he was just 21.
He's a pretty tough guy in those days. He certainly has mellowed today, but in those days, he called the shots. And in those days, if he asked me to jump, I'd say how high. Like, we could get through 80 horses in an hour and a half, no problems. He had a lot of staff, very, very well organised, and Tommy was just like a madman at the track. It was just 110 mile an hour from the time you stepped foot on the joint to the time you left, and you just had to participate. You were part of the team, and bang, once it started, boy, it started. And if you put a step out of line, he'd eat you up for breakfast. That's what he was like.
Throughout his career, Smith has lived by the axiom that there's no such thing as bad publicity. Unlike some trainers, he encourages the media, always has.
Well, I never forget, I thought, now, how can I get publicity? I only one way I can get publicity. In those days, trainers wouldn't talk to press. They say, oh, you can't talk to press. I thought, the only way they will know me if I can get some coverage. And when I won the first race, I got the front page of the Herald.
In the early days, TJ was virtually unknown at Flemington, but not for long.
He was telling us a story how nobody in Melbourne knew me, sort of thing. He said, we were over in the middle of this day, it's raining, And he said, old Denny Lewis had his umbrella up and I got underneath the umbrella sort of thing. And Denny Lewis said to him, here come the press. He said, look out, you know, and a couple of the blokes moved away and there's a camera there and all the rest of it. And TJ said, I waited till he got over near Lewis. He said, and then I dived over and put my arm around Denny. He said, and I stood like this with a big smile under the umbrella. Well, he said, that afternoon I picked up the paper. He said, nobody in Melbourne knew much about Tommy Smith, but he said they knew that afternoon because there I was beside the trainer of the favourite in the Melbourne Cup. He said, and I've got back to the Newmarket Hotel. He said, and there's my picture on the back page. He said, so at least I'll let somebody in Melbourne know who I was.
But everyone at Flemington certainly knew Smith in 1955, when he trained his first Melbourne Cup winner, Topper Rowe.
Under the whip, Topper Rowe is holding him at bay. Williamson riding desperately on, rising fast, but he can't make it, and it's Topper Rowe's cup. It's Topper Rowe's.
26 years later, he won it again.
Just a Dash has darted clear now. Just a Dash is out 2 lengths clear of El Lorena and then our Paddy Boy, and Just a Dash is going to win the Melbourne Cup. Just a Dash by 2
The
lengths.
Cup also gave TJ one of his biggest disappointments. In 1982, Kingston Town was brave in defeat.
Noble Comment fighting back, followed by Miser Rape on the outside and Gurner's Lane flying on the inside. Gurner's Lane after Kingston Town. Gurner's Lane and Kingston Town. Gurner's Lane going a shade the better, and Gurner's Lane wins the Cup from Kingston Town.
He said, look, we had a game plan. Everything went according to game plan, except getting beaten neck.
The Melbourne Cup may be Australia's most famous race, but surprisingly,
The race I really love, and I love young horses, I like the Golden Slipper.
And Tommy Smith has trained his 6th Golden Slipper winner here today. A Golden Slipper record that's going to stand for a long, long time. To TJ Smith, his 6th Golden Slipper success.
Prior to the 1986 Slipper, Smith used unusual tactics with the filly he bred, owned and trained.
He jacked up going onto the track on the Thursday morning, 2 days before the Slipper, and Tommy produced a stock whip, tailed her up, and sent her onto the track. You know, it's something that you don't think people do, but that's what he's like.
Three Catalan being taken on by Bounding Away. Imperial Baron behind them, not getting much room, and then Just Looming. Bounding Away's taken the lead narrowly. It's Bounding Away coming away, and Bounding Away wins it.
I think the greatest highlight for the combined family was when Bounding Away won, because Tom had bred it, owned and trained it, and Gay and I led it in. You know, it was a whole family affair.
Soon after Bounding Away's Slipper win, TJ wanted his daughter Gay to take control of Tulloch Lodge, but the Australian Jockey Club refused her a trainer's licence.
It was very, very hurtful, and Tom wouldn't like me to mention it, but I thought one of these days I'll mention it. I couldn't understand their attitude, because she did nothing wrong.
7 years ago when she applied for a licence, she could have got then, because I was going to leave her 60 horses to train. It'd been like young David Haynes going into the business. But as time went on, I thought she would never get a licence, but she said, I'll get it.
He supported me to the hilt. You know, he would be saying, look, don't worry, this time you'll get over it. I mean, you've just got to bear with it, you know, and just got to cope with it.
Funny thing, she finished up, she won the case against the AJC. But in the meantime, I've only got down to about 20 horses, and Gay, I said, well, I've got to have some to train. Well, it's a funny life for a girl to break into the racing, but I think Gay's willpower and the way she can handle people, I think she will do it.
In October 1992, she did it.
Tiakau, Nick and Sir Winston are 5 in front of Donegal Mist. Tiakau, Nick on the outside and Nick in front. Sir Winston fighting on courageously. Nick Detman shooting for the big double. Drives Tiakau, Nick to the line, and Tiakau, Nick wins the Metropolitan. And what a tremendous triumph for Gay Waterhouse in her first season as a trainer to win a Group 1 race at Royal Randwick. Tremendous effort by trainer Gay Waterhouse.
But it was just the satisfaction, I suppose, of seeing his daughter, you know, his only child, and the great love he has for me, and the great love I have for my dad. And it was just so wonderful. I mean, it was this magical moment where we were just so emotional about the whole thing. And looking back at the photographs and the video and the different things that we have of it, you just can see it, you know, in his eyes and the smile, and just, it was a very heady occasion.
Thomas John Smith, a man who rose from humble beginnings, tamed a wild brumby, and went on to achieve unprecedented racetrack success and fabulous wealth. A legend whose many records include 33 consecutive Sydney Trainers Premierships.
I don't think his achievements will ever be bettered. Like, nobody will win 33 successive premierships. Somebody might win 35 derbies, but Tommy's got it on the board. He's won practically every feature race in Australia, and it's there, and he was the first to do it.
For mine, he's undoubtedly the best trainer I've ever seen. I'll go to my grave saying that. His dominating years were uncanny, which we'll never ever see again. And whoever rode for him, from a jockey's point of view, whoever rode for him was leading jockey, simple as that, because he just dominated so much.
No, you can't have anything but admiration for him. He's the utmost professional in the way he conducts his business. He's got a tremendous outlook on life and racing. As I say, when you work with him and you know him well, you're just so proud of him. You can learn a lot from the man.
You know, you don't make horse people. You've either got the gift or you haven't got the gift, and I think he was born with a gift. You've only got to look at the records. Nobody can be 33 years leading trainer without having had as we call it, a God-given talent. And he had it there.
He's a very humble person, my father. I'm not saying that he's not a very egotistical person. He couldn't get to the great heights in his career if he didn't have that driving force. You know, but he's a very kind man. He's exceptionally generous. He's a very black and white sort of character also. You know, if you do the wrong thing by him, that's finished and he'll just move on, you know. He doesn't suffer fools gladly.
And what about TJ himself? Can he explain his amazing success?
To make money, you've got to gamble. And I went into racing to make money. I didn't go into racing for fun. I said, well, I'm getting up at 3:30 in the morning. If I'm not successful at it in 2 years, I'm going to give it away, but I'm going to make money at it. Horse trainers have got to be like people who grow roses. They've got to have green fingers. My wife can put a plant in, it would grow. I would put it in, it would die. And that's what I reckon make good horse trainers. You've just got to be born. You can see some chaps that never had much experience with horses. They get a horse and it'll bloom. And others have been in the game all their life. The horses never seem to look really fit.
I don't think there will ever be anybody to achieve what Tom has done. And he's written into folklore, I think, in racing.
It's given me a fortune. I've had all the pleasure that men can have. I've got a lovely home, a beautiful family life, and what else do you want? I've got good health, and I'll keep training horses till I die.
On the matter of retirements, I have just a small announcement of my own. I do not intend to renew my trainer's licence at the end of the season. I'm doing this for one reason only. I believe that I've always believed that the future belongs to those who plan for it. And I think the plan now is for my son David to take over the training responsibilities. I have confidence in him. More importantly, my clients have demonstrated that they share that confidence and want him to train for their horses. And well, I've done it. But I've got to say the decision was far from easy. I love the game so much. But Mr. Chairman, the pain will be eased more than a little if I can win the Cox Plate again on Saturday.
Running on into the straight now. Starting Century is clear. Alvarad knuckling down to his toes, followed by our Westminster. Alvarad going to Starling Century. Clark riding desperately, and the appointed Alvarad wins the Cox Plate.
Colin Hayes himself could not have scripted a more deserving finale to his outstanding career. To him, the Cox Plate is the ultimate in Australian racing. Fittingly, he won it in his final hour with an Irish-bred stallion owned by an Arab sheikh. For Colin Hayes is very much the international ambassador of Australian racing. Lindsay Park is a world-class training and breeding property nestled in South Australia's Barossa Valley. It is also home for the Hayes family. This is a realisation of a vision that Colin had some 30 years ago. From these tranquil surroundings, Hayes propelled himself to the top of his profession. Along the way, he created a string of training records, Australian, Commonwealth, and world records. In a career spanning more than 40 years, Hayes trained horses, won more than 5,300 races.
Rory's Jester in front, Speed Check trying hard, but Rory's Jester has beaten Speed Check. Dulcify is going to be too strong, races the Caraman, and the Colin Hayes trained Dulcify wins the Derby, a length and a quarter to Caraman.
Running on with Sea Legend, Clark's got a run, I think, and Talec's a length and a half in front of Rising Fear. Colin Hayes wins his second cup, and Talec a half Rising Fear.
The serenity and majesty of Lindsay Park is a long way from when it all began.
Well, I always loved horses, because I came through the Depression era as a small child, and my father died when I was 10, so there wasn't a lot of surplus money to be spent on horses in the family. But I used to save my pocket money up and go to the local riding school. It was 2 shillings an hour, and I used to ride a bike when I was about 12 to about 5 mile there and 5 mile back, and that was, I'd look forward to that all week.
As a young lad, full of bravado, riding buck jumpers seemed like an easy way to earn some extra money. It's strange how fate works.
Might have saved my life, actually. I rode one, I think it was £2 if you stayed on him for a minute or something, and he used to suck back or buck backwards, and he turned over and I fractured my spine, and I was going up for a medical when I was 18 for the Air Force, and all my friends were joining the Air Force with me, and of course with a broken back they wouldn't take me, so it's strange how your pattern of life works out, and most of my friends didn't come back.
Hayes went on to ride as an amateur with some success. However, it was a horse he bought on the toss of a coin that set him on his way.
Well, he came down with a mob of station horses, and they were drafting him out to be, a dealer bought them down, and they were picking him out for Rodeos. And I liked the look of this horse, and asked him how much he wanted for him, and he said £10. So I said, I'll toss you 9 or 10, and I was lucky enough to win the toss.
With an owner-trainer's licence, Hayes prepared Surefoot to win races on flat and over jumps.
And I'd fed that horse, as I said, on glucose and eggs, and had him marching around, not walking around. I'd put a lot into him.
The prize money and the taste of success gave strength to his ambition of training professionally. The old horse not only kick-started the Hayes training career, he also paid for a honeymoon, but only just.
I can remember Betty and I were planning to get married, and I had old Surefoot. I'd got him ready for this amateur 1,800-metre amateur flat race at Cheltenham. Because it was on the flat, he was long odds, 66 to 1. So I put our honeymoon money each way on him, unbeknownst to Betty. And when we did, there were 20 in the race. And when we jumped out, I drew 18, a fella on the outside of me went straight under his neck. And he actually hit the ground and got up again. And of course I was tailed off last with our honeymoon money. And you couldn't hit him with the whip because he's a very thin-skinned horse and used to resent it. So I was hissing and roaring and pushing and pumping, and I straightened up with 5 in front of me and got up in the last stride to run third. And so I made money and it all went well.
Colin's early success with Surefoot attracted other owners to his stable, but Hayes was still working a full-time job. Something had to give.
In 1950, I said to Betty, I'd like to apply for a licence and we'll make this our life. And I said I'd give myself 5 years to make it. And we won our first South Australian Trainers Premiership within that time.
We started off and he had instant success. Just the whole thing snowballed from there. And instead of, you could literally say, instead of 5 years, it was a 5-minute situation. Everything clicked and he went straight ahead, went from strength to strength. Owners were clamouring to get into his stables.
Ron Hutchinson rode regularly for Hayes in Melbourne during the 50s. To this day, they're good friends.
I was in Adelaide for the Adelaide Cup Carnival, and I thought I had, some sort of a chance of winning the Cup at the time, and CS comes in and the jockey's room looking for a rider for his horse that he was training called Wolf Call. And anyway, he asked me to ride it, and then nobody knew about CS in those days, and especially me. So, I was looking after myself, and I thought, no, I didn't want to ride it, and I told him, that I was had a chance in the Cup and I didn't want to ride it. So anyway, off he went. And at the time there was a steward there called Fred Everest. And anyway, he was looking in the jockey's room also. And CS said that he couldn't get a rider. Oh, and Fred said, he said, I'll get you a rider, don't worry about that. So he approached me to ride Wolf Call. So of course, naturally, I couldn't refuse the Stuyvesant steward, so I rode Wolf Call.
I drew 4, and I said to him, would you just ease it out when you straighten up and come down the outside if you can? And he said, righto, but he didn't. He stayed on the fence, and when he came in, he called out across the mounting enclosure, this is a camel. So it was my best horse,
You wouldn't believe it, but a week later, with an inexperienced apprentice on it, it comes and it bolts in. So, of course, it made me look a real fool.
They next met at Flemington, 12 months later.
And I said, hello, Ron, do you remember me? You rode a horse for me called Wolf Call in Adelaide a year ago. He said, yes, and didn't it make a bloody mug of me? And I immediately warmed to him.
In 1956, Colin Hayes won the first of 28 trainers' premierships in Adelaide. Later, he travelled overseas, buying mares and observing the European training methods. This reconnaissance planted a seed, a blueprint for his own private training establishment.
I went with him in 1962 to England and walked up and down the Newmarket Downs with him so that he was working out angles and lines and elevations, and he modelled the training facilities at Lindsay Park on the Newmarket Downs.
Barossa Valley winemaker Wyndham Hill-Smith was a client of Colin's at the time. He'd heard of a suitable property that might be for sale.
I came up with David Coles, and like the old biblical proverb, ask and ye shall receive, we knocked on the front door and asked Sir Keith Angus, who owned it, would he consider selling, and he said, why do you ask, Colin, because I knew him. And I said, well, we'd like to build a training setup here and a stud where we could hopefully breed world-class horses. And he said, well, this place can do it. But he said, I'll talk to my son Henry and I'll let you know in a couple of weeks. And a couple of weeks later, he said, yes, it can be bought. And so we bought it. And it was a big turning point in my life.
Lindsay Park's racing manager, Harry Lyne, recalls the initial reaction to the bold move.
At the time, many of our owners left us. Nobody had ever succeeded in the country being a top trainer.
Oh, it was a revolutionary thing to do. I didn't realise at the time. I mean, basically, he was my dad, and everything he said he could do, he always did. I never doubted that he could do it. But I didn't realise that there was a lot of people that said that it couldn't be done. They said that you couldn't travel horses from up in the country to down to the city tracks. It just couldn't be done. I mean, you had to train a horse on race tracks where they went around in circles, and you know, that the country atmosphere wouldn't, you know, that it just wouldn't suit them. There was a million reasons why it wouldn't work.
And when I formed a syndicate and bought Lindsay Park initially in 1965, some of my owners left me because they said it was too far to come and see their horses, and we built the tracks and set it all up. It took me 5 years to do it, and we came up here in 1970 with 16 horses.
Ron Hutchinson was one of the original shareholders in Lindsay Park.
We didn't expect it in our wildest dreams that it would go and get as big as what it has done. But Colin, even those days, had the visions of building tracks and sort of making it into a real show place.
Although many had doubted the success of the move, Colin Hayes clearly did not.
No, because the first full year I had was 70-71, and I trained over 100 winners that year here.
Today, Lindsay Park is one of the finest thoroughbred nurseries in the land. This scenario was also part of Hayes's vision. In the early 70s, the stud rose to prominence through the acquisition of the French-bred stallion Without Fear.
But he wanted the stallion. There was no shadow of doubt. I don't think I've ever known him to be so positive in the potential of a stallion as he was with Without Fear.
And I asked if ever he could be sold, could I have first crack at him? And they just rang me and said, the horse is coming on the market, would you like to buy him? So I did, and they weren't flying horses. He came out by ship and landed in Perth.
Perhaps it's not generally known, we took him off the boat in Perth. I was over there conducting a healing sale at the time. The horse nearly died. One of my staff, Peter de Lacy, stayed with him day and night in the quarantine station, had the horse with his head on his lap, feeding him nourishment, trying to keep him alive.
He really looked bad when he first arrived. Matter of fact, we know when he arrived in Perth off the ship, we actually notified Lloyd's of London that a claim might be pending.
Colin Hayes' dream was unfolding before him, but the squire of Lindsay Park was a long way from the action. In fact, he was lucky to be alive. He was recovering from surgery, major surgery, a heart bypass operation.
And I remember being a bit concerned that he wouldn't make it, because I didn't feel I was ready to take over the organisation then. So, my feelings were being, apart from him being my father, I didn't really want to be left in charge, to be responsible for the whole operation at that stage.
But Peter was in charge when Without Fear's first crop hit the ground running.
Just so much better than anything else that we'd ever seen. I mean, they just seemed to be at that stage a class above anything that we'd ever seen before. And included in those horses were horses like Desirable and Unaware, and with some fabulous horses. Everything that you put a saddle on could run. It was amazing. We just could not believe it.
They were sensible horses and precocious, and they proved it by having 30 individual winners of 49 races in his first year, a record that still stands today.
Without Fear, the champion sire, is now retired. His role in promoting Lindsay Park to international recognition is not forgotten. The roll call of feature race winners from Lindsay Park is distinguished. However, from the many good horses Hayes has trained, one stands alone.
Dulcify getting out is coming home hard down the outside. Valley of Georgia and Caraman with Dulcify now coming at them strongly, and he swamped them in a stride. Caraman was in front, but Dulcify got checked and then went straight past it, and he can't get beaten at Fleming and Dulcify.
In the spring of '79, the parrot-mouth gelding Dulcify won a string of weight-for-age races in exciting fashion.
Dulcify just the leader near the line from Arbor Shane, and Dulcify's won it.
My happiest moments with his electrifying finishes in racing was Dulcify, and he was a sensational galloper, and I think that Cox Plate win was the most convincing and best win that I've ever seen in the Cox Plate.
But Dulcify well clear. Brent Thompson going for his fourth Cox Plate, and he's got it.
He's home, Dulcify. He's 6 lengths in front of Chivalry, and then after a Shane imposing stopping. Dulcify's won by a minute, and that's the way he might win the Melbourne Cup. Dulcify by 6 lengths to Chivalry.
Hayes had never won the Melbourne Cup, but with Dulcify, it seemed he would. But instead of glory, there was tragedy.
Now 500 metres left to go in the Cup. Sarfraz is joined by Halberg. Red Nose putting its way into it now. They'll follow then back behind them by Salamander. And down the outside running on fairly as Worry Symbol. Dulcify's broken down in the Cup. Dulcify's broken down.
He beat Hyperno something like 12 lengths in the Cox Plate just 12 days before or something. And Hyperno won it, and I'm not taking anything off Hyperno, but he was a different class horse to Hyperno. And my saddest moment when he was killed when short price favourite for the Melbourne Cup. And he was a horse that he only raced till he was 4 and didn't start till the last day of his 2-year-old days. So really only had 18 months racing, and he was killed. He had unlimited potential. He was, you know, one of the really greats.
In the late 70s, Hayes teamed up with international racing identity Robert Sangster. He too had become engulfed by the charisma surrounding the Cup. On the anniversary of Dulcify's loss, Hayes and Sangster became part of racing folklore.
Flying home, but Belledale Ball stolen a march, and Belledale Ball wins the Melbourne Cup by 2
And then we won it with Belledale Ball, who was about, I'd have to say, a stone worse horse than Dulcify. So, you know, in those handicap conditions, luck plays a very big part.
6 years later, Hayes repeated his Cup success. Once again, the international influence was there, with the Arab-owned American-bred stallion apt to lack.
Colin Hayes wins his 2nd Cup.
Over the years, Hayes has employed the services of some great jockeys. After Hutchinson was Bill Pyers, then John Stocker. In the late 70s, he chose Brett Thompson, then Darren Gauci and Michael Clark. And for a jockey down on his luck, teaming up with a powerful stable is a handy break.
The last time that I went out for quite a few weeks, and at any rate, Mr. CS had a talk to me, and he said when I resume riding, if I like to go into his camp and do a bit of yakka, he'd be only too willing to give me a leg up when I got back. And that man, he stuck to his word, and he bunked me up when I got my licence, and from then on I rode a lot of winners for him.
But Mick was able to return CS a favour down the track. He put his judgment on the line after riding a horse called Our Paddy Boy.
I knew the horse was up for sale, and I just mentioned to Mr. CS that I thought if he was interested that he could buy a Derby winner. You talk about things that you remember in your life, but for Mr. Hayes, that was a wonderful thrill that went through him, happened to me that year, because Mr. Hayes never came to the carnival over there, and he was a sick man at home. And to be fortunate enough to win the Derby and the Sydney Cup on that horse was a wonderful, I think it was a nice tonic for him. But it was a wonderful reward that he gave me, you know.
Mick is really a lovely bloke, you know. He's just one of the characters of the turf, all-time characters. He had very little to say, but in his homespun way, got the message across very well. And he rode a lot of good winners for me, and very emotional, excitable sort of bloke, but a very gifted rider.
Following a second heart bypass operation in the early 80s, Hayes was ready to retire. Surprisingly, his heir apparent was reluctant to take the throne.
Peter's a very private person, and he didn't really want to be the trainer and run the place. And when he decided he would, because I'd been grooming him for it, and that he didn't want it, David reached over, shook hands and smiled and winked at him and said, "I'm sure you've made the right decision, Pete." David wanted it very badly.
CS delayed his retirement to groom the new heir. Nothing changed though, and the Lindsay Park juggernaut rolled on. The winners and records continued.
Last but all foul. He's well clear of fair serve with 25 metres to go, and Orthal is a brilliant winner. Orthal by 3 lengths.
Zabeel on the outside, and Starley Century fight it out from Key Dancer and Graydon Gambler. Zabeel going a bit the better and punched out.
King's High starting to stride away well in the run to the post. It's going to bolt in. King's High has gone on to win by about 4 or 5 lengths actually to Trendy Bay.
David Hayes had just reached school age when the family moved to Lindsay Park in 1970. Even then, he was following in his father's footsteps.
From when he was about 4, I took him to the races with me. And he thought it was his right to go in the steward's room too. Until they finally had to tell me to keep me out the mounting clothes. He used to tune into the jockeys and listen to the instructions.
Every weekend before I went to boarding school, I used to go racing with Dad. So much so that I remember I used to follow him everywhere. My job was to check that the horses had their blinkers on or the right bits. That used to give me a little job to keep me busy. I used to share my interest between racing, football and athletics at the time, and I remember Dad said, look, you've got to be going, it's either you or I employ someone else, and if I do, you'll always be that rung behind the person that stepped in before you. So he said, if you want to take the opportunity, go for it. And I was very keen too, and I was a little bit green, I suppose, to use a horse term, but it's amazing how quickly you catch on when you have to.
How true, especially if your teacher is Colin Hayes. But not even a proud father could have anticipated the success his protege would achieve in his first season.
Siniston and better loosen up coming at them. It's Canny Lad, Siniston better loosen up from St Jude. It's now better loosen up, and Siniston better loosen up goes home.
1 week later, on Derby Day, David trained 6 group winners, a world record.
Must be a record on Derby Day.
But there was more to come. Better Loosen Up travelled to Japan for a victory that received international recognition.
His win in the Japan Cup was a very strong field that year, and it was a superb ride of Michael Clark's, and it was an all-Australian win. He was bred in Australia, he was trained in Australia, and he was ridden by an Australian, and I felt very proud of that.
Having had the good fortune to experience racing around the world, Hayes has seen some of the best thoroughbreds in action. In Australia, the best he's seen was trained by his old rival, T.J. Smith.
Well, I think the best horse I had seen in Australia was Tulloch, Tommy's horse. He sent him down to me for a fortnight when he won his £100,000 at Cheltenham, and Bill Pyers rode him. And there's no doubt about Tulloch, and this was really after he'd been very ill, but he was a fantastic horse.
It was just a few years after Tulloch's retirement that the TAB was introduced to Australian racing.
The TAB has been the most significant thing in my time. It's revolutionised Australian racing and has been the thing that has put us ahead of all the other countries.
Over the years, the Australian public has been accustomed to seeing Bob Hawke at the races. The former Prime Minister has always been a strong ally of racing.
I met Bob Hawke he presented me with a trophy when he first became head of the Labor movement, and he first came into the union movement, and he said to me, what's wrong with South Australian racing? He said, you're racing 4 and 5 runners in very small stakes. So I told him, and he asked could he come up here and have a look at the place. So I said, sure. So I showed him through, and we talked, and he said, gee, what you've said makes sense to me. He said, will you put that on paper? So I did, and he lobbied the then cabinet and got a racing inquiry, the first racing inquiry for years and years. And from that inquiry, our stakes doubled in 2 years. And I immediately respected him for somebody who really tried to do something he believed in. And we became friends, and we're still friends. Really, in Bob Hawke's time, I think he did more for racing than any other Prime Minister.
I think there are many elements in his greatness. First of all, he's a very, very good human being. There's a great integrity and sincerity about everything that Colin Hayes has done. Secondly, he's come up from the bottom. I mean, he started out as a tradesman, an amateur rider, and he had nothing given to him on a plate. So he learned it the hard way. Then he showed his imagination and his courage, if you like, by saying, well, I'm going to shift out of Adelaide. I'm going to invest in this massive property up in the Barossa Valley. Everyone thought he was mad, that he'd gone really lost the marbles. But he was right. Colin once said to me, he said, you know, horses are like human beings. He said, their environment is important to them. And he said, look at this up here at Lindsay Park. What's a horse going to be like compared to a horse that's boxed up down in stables in the city? Here, they have their own training tracks, they can run around in their own paddocks and so on. And he said they're happier horses, they're going to do better. He was right, and of course, out of that, he's created world records. You know, I think in every respect, he's just a superb trainer.
Colin Hayes is a rare mixture. He is a down-to-earth horseman, an eloquent and reflective man who read the trends in Australian racing like a prophet. His natural affinity with horses is the basis of his success.
If you're going to be a really top horse trainer, then you have to have that sensitivity toward the animal. And it is an art of observation. As I said earlier, you notice changes in behaviour pattern, expression in the eyes, and you know, a horse responds to so many things that other people might notice. You just know how much work to give them and how much not to give them. You notice their recovery rate, their muscle, and all the things that the way they're moving, and whether you should come back a little or push them a bit harder and all that sort of stuff. They're the things that nobody can teach you have to know. It's more of an art than science, put it that way.
Well, I think he is a very good horseman. You know, I think there are a lot of trainers that aren't particularly good horsemen, but he is a very good horseman, and he's a very kind horseman. He's a man that will always try and find a way to please the horse. You know, he's one of his great things is always is a happy horse is a good horse.
Love of a horse, dedication, ability to work unbelievable hours a day. And I just think that, as I said previously, it's his hobby. He loves the game, and that's why he's been so successful at it.
Without doubt, he's been a great ambassador for racing, and people, I'm sure, will, when they come to Australia, if they're interested in thoroughbreds, the only place they want to go to is Lindsay Park and have a look around.
He's certainly achieved more than milestones wherever he's gone, but knowing CS, he'd never stay still, that he'd go on, and I mean, I think we'll see a lot more in the record books before CS is finished.
I think he's as good a bloke as what he was a trainer, champion.
The great thing about Dad is that for a person that's been in the business for so long, he's always open to new ideas and ways he can improve, and he's always got his eyes open. When he travels overseas, he travels with an open mind to see how things are done. He realises there's more than one way to skin a cat.
And if CS could toss that coin again, would he have done anything different?
No. I'm at peace with the world. I've had a very happy life, and a very satisfying one, and one that has it's opened the doors in so many places for me. No, I couldn't imagine anything else.
When his nerves are a wreck, cause it's his bloomin' neck. He's depending on you to get the package through. It's just gotta be there, but no one seems to care. You know you're not alone, just pick up the phone. Say hello, Comet. Hello. Say hello, Comet. Say hello, 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 Comet. Right across Australia or just across the town, Comet never lets you down. Say hello, 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 Comet.
Mid-Salope hit the front and they
Cup, 300 metres to run. Ivory Way battling back, then Superimposed and Sheba's Revenge late. But Let's Elope has burst away, and the Foster's Melbourne Cup belongs to the mare. Let's Elope bolts the cup in, wins by 3 lengths, but it's a Cummings Quinella. Sheba's Revenge got second, close up on the inside.
Bart Cummings, not only his 9th Melbourne Cup, but yet another Quinella. What a training feat by the master trainer.
Count from 1 to 9 slowly. Then replace those numbers with this scenario. Even then, an understanding of this incredible training achievement is difficult to grasp. In racing, they say there's no such thing as a certainty, but there is one. You can bet that the only person who will break the Cummings record of 9 Melbourne Cups is Bart himself. Although it's fair to say that Cummings is best known for his success in Australia's most famous race, the trainer, often referred to as a genius, has a score of other outstanding credits. He's the only person to have won training premierships in 3 states. In 1974, he became the first trainer to win $1 million in prize money for a season. And no less than 8 champions with a Cummings polish have been named as Australia's Horse of the Year. Bart Cummings is something of an enigma. He's a private person who thinks deeply about his profession. Mostly, he prefers to let his horses do the talking, where it counts, on the racetrack. His Melbourne foreman, Leon Corstens, has worked closely with Bart for more than 20 years.
I think the only one that knows Bart Cummings is Bart Cummings himself. I don't think he likes people getting too close to him. No, I think he's a very, very hard man to get to know. Very evasive, I think.
Unlike his contemporaries, Bart feels uneasy with media attention. By now you'd think he'd be used to it, but it's always been that way. In his role as a racing journalist, Kevin Sattler first interviewed Bart in the mid-50s.
Well, when you compare him with Colin Hayes or Tommy Smith, of the trio, Bart was the introvert type. The other 2, Colin and Tommy, were extroverts. Bart would always be guarded about what he said to the media particularly, as if he had a shyness about him, or he was embarrassed or was wary of being put into the limelight.
The Cummings-Higgins combination is one of the most successful the Australian turf has ever witnessed. Their 16-year association produced amazing results, including 2 Melbourne Cup winners.
Not only is he a great horse trainer, and probably the greatest, we'll never know, but he's a horse psychologist, and he will get through to 90% of horses that have a mental attitude, and probably an attitude where they don't want to be a racehorse. He will work, and he will work every spare minute he can to try and mentally dearrange that horse and bring it back as a racehorse, and not as a non-trier, as a lot of horses are.
The Cummings link with horses began in outback Australia at the turn of the century. Bart's father, Jim, worked on a station west of Alice Springs.
In those days, they used to breed, apart from cattle, a lot of remount horses, which they used to sell to the Indian Army. And some of the properties in that area at that time was nothing to have 5,000 horses. And anything from 2 to 5,000 horses was considered a fairly good living. They used to, I think, herd them down at Peterborough and break them and do what they could to make them rideable, and away they go to India. There was a mare called Myrtle, which the uncle owned, and that one, among other a few picnic meetings, they used to bet very well on the side. There was no TAB or bookmakers, but I think the Golden Sovereigns used to change hands out the back of the hotel. They used to have many picnic meetings and weekend challenges between horses and so on. And Myrtle finally become fairly recognised racehorse, won the 1908 Alice Springs Cup. I think Dad rode it when it won.
Jim Cummings then headed for Adelaide with Myrtle and a pack horse. It was some ride.
He got down to a place called Peterborough, I think it was, and the horses sort of bicycled the first time and shied and tipped Dad off, and the billy cans and the pack horse and everything. He had to trace him back 20 miles and start again. From then on, he got bypassed all the towns and got down to Jamestown and won the Jamestown Cup. So that's when that's the story how he became involved in racing.
He later moved down to Adelaide, where he established a stud farm and training stables.
He had a stud which he called Roscarbery Stud. That was the town in County Cork where Mum came from, and that's why they named the stud Roscarbery, and he owned where the runway is now. It was a part of the stud at that time, and near the old gum tree in St Leonard's and North Glenelg is where the stables were and where I started training. But he did reasonably well given the opportunities he had. Those days was a big stable was 12 horses, and it's very difficult to have the successes and the numbers that the trainers, present-day trainers enjoy with 15, 60 or even greater teams. I used to help. I used to ride one and lead one each side of the track in the early days. As my brother Paddy also, we used to take 6 between us, which was labour saving for Dad, and didn't know much about them. We just all knew the names of them and so on. After getting a little bit older, learnt the pedigrees of them and so on.
The name Cummings first appeared in Melbourne Cup history back in 1950. Jim Cummings sent Comic Court to Melbourne for the Cup, with Bart as his groom.
Winning a cup at that time, it was the furthest thing from my mind, and Dad had never won it, and I had never been associated with it, and it certainly, I suppose, every trainer's dream is to win a Melbourne Cup, and even as a groom, similar applied to me also. And after all, when I started training, I thought, well, the ultimate would be to win a Melbourne Cup if you can acquire a horse good enough and prepare it for it.
Tall in the saddle now, Clinton puts the whip away, and Comic Court is racing on to win by 3 lengths from Chiquita. Morse Code is third, and they're followed further back by...
But he went to the front 7 from home and never looked like losing. But I was his groom at that time, and I thought it was terrific, naturally.
However, Bart was never anxious to become a trainer, and he never would have had he followed a doctor's suggested cure for his asthma.
Horses and oak dust and loosened chaff, really the culprit. The doctor said keep away from them and your troubles are over. So I decided not to take his advice.
Eventually, officialdom forced his hand.
I think about 1953 or so, Dad went to England for a trip, first decent holiday I think Dad ever had. And he took Mother with him to Ireland, and he was intended to be away about 6 months. And I had to look after about 10 or 12 horses in the stable, which at the time was full up. And I think the stewards told me that I have to take out a licence, told Dad, so other than, if it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't have had a licence at that time. So he was away for 6 or 7 months, and when he came home, he gave me 2 or 3 horses to train on my own account.
It took nearly 2 years to win his first race. Finally, he broke the drought in February 1955 at Morfordville. His jockey was Des Coleman.
It's only won him by a hair's breadth, but little were we to know that it was going to go on to be the first of many that he was going to have. In those days, no one really thought that Bart would rise to the great heights of what he did.
Yeah, I suppose I just worked hard at it, and I had a few lucky breaks and just went on from there.
The turning point of his career came in 1958. The first of 9 South Australian Derby winners Bart has trained signalled his arrival. Those early lessons learned from his father would become the hallmark of a successful career.
Without a doubt, Bart picked up many ideas from his father. You've got to understand that Jim Cummings was a great horseman in his own right. Not many people realise he was a successful horseman from the centre of Australia, lived on a station, knew the tough life that horses had to bear in that area. He also knew that to be successful you had to work hard. Now Bart mightn't, as a young fellow, like that angle of hard work, but he watched very closely what his father did in feeding, the training. His father trained horses a lot harder than Bart does. Bart picked up all those aspects.
The clubs or the pubs or the track, they always say that Cummings worked his horses too hard, but he seemed to win a lot of the big races. So I used to just have a good think about this, and when those who gave the criticism weren't feeding anywhere near the protein or the grains that Dad was. So really, they couldn't afford to work them as hard as we did. Horses are like humans. They're all individuals, and you treat them as you find them, and in that way you're going to get the maximum effort and performance irrespective of their constitution.
All true horsemen have an affinity with the horse, but those gifted had something extra, a sixth sense.
Not many people can remember what they see. What's on the wall there 5 minutes ago, no one could tell you. But if you remember what you see, particularly in movement with horses and action, and why they change their action or get their head high or not stretch out. So if you get everything going naturally and working smoothly, you're going to succeed in getting that horse to the best of his possible performance. If he's not striking and hitting out correctly, you must find out why, if you can. And surprising if you try, what you find out.
When a young Bart Cummings was beginning to make a name for himself, so too was a young jockey from Deniliquin in New South Wales. His name, Roy Higgins. But the partnership that would later blossom got away to an ordinary start. Higgins was beaten on a horse called Native Statesman.
I rode it, and on the Saturday, and it started a short price favourite. That was my first meeting with J.B. Cummings, then a young man, a young trainer from Adelaide. I must say I didn't do all that good a job on it. I did get it beaten quite comfortably, and I was sacked immediately.
In the late 50s, Bart's search for a cup horse took him to New Zealand.
Looking up the results, most of the Group 1 winners in the Eastern Seaboard came from New Zealand pedigrees and were bred or sold from there, and I decided to go and have a look at them.
In 1963, he looked at a filly that would change the course of Melbourne Cup history. Her name, Lightfingers. As a 3-year-old, she came to Melbourne. Roy Higgins had the ride.
He didn't like the look of much, and but Roy was a very excellent judge on a horse, and he said it moved terrific. But looking at it, he wouldn't really give two bob for it.
There was no oil painting, I can assure you, and I had this big saddle on her with lead bags and everything to make up the weight in those days, and as the gates opened, the saddle slipped back, and she actually travelled that whole trip with this massive weight right across the back. The saddle went back some 8 or 10 inches, and she still only got beaten ahead. And I said, when I come back in, I thought, well, I'll probably get sacked again here because it's my second go for Bart Cummings.
Cummings went into the spring of 1965 quietly confident he could emulate his father's cup victory. But his long-range plans for Lightfingers were in turmoil when the mare was injured.
Lightfingers did get hurt in the Caulfield Stakes, and was a favourite and was to run in the Caulfield Cup. But she walked for about 4 or 5 days after. She had a shoulder problem, didn't run the Caulfield Cup, and she only had a couple of gallops before the McKinnon Stakes. And really, I knew she was very good, but I wasn't confident she would win. We had another horse at that time, Zaima, who'd done everything pretty well. He ran second in the Caulfield Cup, missed the penalty, and had improved a great deal since the Caulfield Cup. And I was of the opinion that he would, on fitness, would beat her.
And even the morning before the Melbourne Cup, on the Monday morning after running in the McKinnon on Saturday, was only an average run on that occasion. I went out and I worked on the Sunday morning, only trotted and cantered, and then on the Monday morning he said, go out and do a bit of even time work. And I come back in and I said to Bart, I said, oh, we're getting very close now, mate. I said,
Lightfingers throwing out a desperate challenge. Zima out a neck in front. Lightfingers pegging him back. Lightfingers goes to Zima. They hit the line, locked together. Deadly.
I'll never forget when I dismounted from her, I looked at him and he sort of winked at me and I said, you backed Zaima, didn't you? He said, yep. And that probably, even though, you know, the hours, painstaking hours that he was to put in to get her to the post, I suppose that naturally the doubt had to be in his mind that it probably hasn't worked, but it was worth the chance. But I think he'd back Zaima on that occasion. We beat Zaima by 1/8 of an inch.
So began an amazing sequence of wins in Australia's most famous race. In 1966, he won his second cup with a pigeon-toed horse nicknamed Charlie Chaplin. To racegoers, the horse was better known as Galilee.
He was a great moving, athletic type of horse. He had a tremendous arm, very short cannon, and his good characteristics sort of overcome the one deformity, and given time and nature to strengthen up the ligaments to counteract the deformity, allowed him to become a great champion. And I really think that he's at 2 mile, he was just probably as good as you see anywhere in the world.
Galilee's got the Melbourne Cup won with a half furlong to go. Galilee is racing away. It'll win easily. Lightfinger second.
The following year, the Cummings-Higgins combination was again in the winner's stall, this time with a horse called Red-Handed.
He broke a bone in his hind leg, and he was in a he was isolated and mobilised in the stall for about 5 months, and that corrected and healed up beautifully, and he won the cup the next year.
Red-Handed, a narrow leader from Redcrest, padded away. Floodbird taking them back, but Red-Handed's too good. He's won the cup and next to Redcrest.
3 cups in 3 years. Cummings, it seemed, was unbeatable. However, in 1969, someone found a way to beat him and his horses. That year, Big Faloo won the Caulfield Cup on protest.
Big Faloo out after Nasori. Nasori in front, Big Faloo flying too late.
Bart was poised to win his 4th Melbourne Cup in 5 years. But on Cup Day, just 14 minutes before the main event, his dream of equaling the Cup training record was shattered.
I think the biggest disappointment would have been the shock scratching of Big Faloo from the 69 Melbourne Cup. As you'll recall, Big Faloo won the Caulfield Cup that year on protest. I think he started second favourite at the Melbourne Cup. He was nobbled and was withdrawn from the Cup about 45 or 50 minutes before the start. And that was one of the greatest tragedies you could experience, because it would have given Bart 10 Melbourne Cup winners. Now the question you must ask yourself, would Big Faloo have beaten Rain Lover in the 69 Melbourne Cup? I'm sure Bart would have said yes had he been fit and well.
Following Bart's trio of Cup victories in the 60s, the question was often asked, how does Bart do it? His vet Percy Sykes is a clue.
He's a very laid-back, apparently casual type of person. He doesn't get phased out by anything. I don't think he pushes in the same way that Tommy pushes. And possibly that is reflected in his training.
Everyone keeps talking about all the time his Melbourne Cups wins, his Melbourne Cup. But I think if you have a look, I think that he's trained, I wouldn't be surprised if he's trained 9 or 10 Newmarket handicap winners. So I'd say he's as good of a sprinter really as what he is with stayers, I do.
One of the best sprinters to have emerged from the Cummings stable was owned by his brother Pat. In 1966, the 2-year-old filly, Storm Queen, proved she was the best of her generation in the Golden Slipper.
I think she won 9 straight, and Pat would always put a little bit away for a rainy day and gamble, have a punt with the rest, and the rest kept multiplying and multiplying.
In 1979, the filly Century Miss snatched a narrow victory in the Slipper to give Bart his 4th success in Australia's richest 2-year-old race.
Flying down the outside, I don't know. She may have got it. Century Miss.
But for a stronger indication of the Cummings prowess with sprinters, look no further than the Newmarket Handicap, Australia's toughest sprint. His record here, 8 so far.
Drawing right away to win by 2 lengths. Goldtrop is mowing them down with 100 to go. Got the lightning bend. Goldtrop reels in the lead. Goldtrop for Cummings wins it. Goldtrop from Lightning Bend second.
5 of Bart's Newmarkets were won in the 70s, a decade in which the Cummings stable dominated. Remember these names? Diana, a 4-time Derby winner. Tontonen, a great sprinter miler. Taj Rossi, the brilliant 3-year-old who dominated the spring of '73.
Rossi's grabbing it. quickly. Dart Rossi's going to get up again. He's won. Dart Rossi.
Ming Dynasty, the Grey Warrior.
But the old marvel, Ming Dynasty's holding them at bay, and Ming Dynasty's going to win the cup again. Hyperno flashes home to run second. It's going to be Gunner.
Leilani, the darling of the turf.
The Bonnie Mare's going to win by 4 lengths. Broadway hits flashing up for second.
Maybe Mahal, a champion mare.
Maybe Mahal brilliantly wins the Doncaster by 2.5 lengths to
In
Always
1975, the Cummings operation moved to Sydney. Bart named his Randwick stables in honour of the brave mare Leilani. Something else happened in the 70s too. Bart won the Melbourne Cup 4 times.
He excels that time of the year. I think that's what the man lives for. What can you say? It's his forte. The pressure's on him, and you can. I think it's only the close people that work around him who can realise that the pressure's on him, because he delegates the pressure somehow. He delegates it to you. All of a sudden, you seem to be working harder, doing a bit extra, going quick at your staff and that, you know.
My mum always said that she, you know, these are a bit different in that week. Yeah, I suppose there is a difference. You know, he's a little edgier sometimes, other times not. Probably spends a bit of time calming Leon down. Leon gets a bit edgy cup week.
In 1974, Bart won his 4th cup with Think Big. In doing so, he equalled the training record.
Leilani just in front. Think Big is picking it up down the outside, and Think Big is going to have to win the cup.
Think Big didn't win another race for 12 months, but the Cummings magic worked again on that first Tuesday in November 1975.
Running on well, but Think Big is in front, and Think Big's going to win it 2 years in succession.
But for the infamous deluge on Cup Day 1976, Cummings believes that Gold and Black would have completed yet another trio of consecutive Cup victories. A year later, on a firm track, Gold and Black gave Bart his 6th Melbourne Cup.
Gold and Black tackled by Reckless on the inside. Gold and Black the outer. Reckless the rails. Gold and Black just inside. Gold and Black will win the cup. Gold and Black has won it from Reckless.
In 1979, Hyperno placed Cup trophy number 7 on the Cummings mantelpiece. Initially, Bart was reluctant to train the horse, who had a reputation as a rogue and a history of leg problems.
Dr. Ray Lake was a friend of mine, and he asked me to take the horse, and I checked it out, and apparently it was had a ligament problem in the past when Jeff had it, and was put out for that reason. And I told him I wasn't interested in it. And after 2 or 3, 2 months of repeatedly asking me to take it, I said, okay, I'll send it in and have a look at it. And looked okay, the ligament looked 100%, couldn't find anything wrong with it, and that's the story.
Hyperno was joining in down the outside. Hyperno on the outside, and Salamander, Hyperno, Salamander. They get the funny finish. Nearly a dead heat between Hyperno.
When you stop and look back from Hyperno's win to Lightfinger's in 1965, Bart was winning, on average, a Melbourne Cup every 2 years. It was some strike rate. However, in the 80s, his cup magic deserted him. Win, lose or draw, something that has never deserted Bart is his sense of humour. Over the years, his dry Irish wit has provided many laughs.
I was over in Adelaide, and it was a very hot day, and I looked at all the horses in the stables, then used to go up to see all the ones in the spelling paddocks. And the health inspector had obviously built himself up for this big interview he had to have with Bart. I remember he had shorts and long stockings and a little moustache. And he came in to Bart's office. Bart was lolling back like he normally does in the armchair. And he said, Mr. Cummings, I have to tell you, you have far too many flies in this place. And Bart, without hesitating, said, well, tell me exactly how many I should have and I'll cut them down.
During the 80s, the Cup may have eluded Cummings, but yet another champion emerged from Leilani Lodge.
Well, I saw Secretariat race win by 30-odd lengths in record time, and I mean, he was just a speed horse. It went all the way, 1.5 miles. At Belmont Park, he was a great horse. I've seen Tulloch was very good, Galilee. I've had a lot of them myself, but I don't want to be biased, but Australia's produced some wonderful horses which would be competitive anywhere in the world. Bozan was a great horse. He was one we forgot about.
How could we forget Bozam, an outstanding racehorse who was voted Horse of the Year in his classic season?
Bozam left them standing. Look at that acceleration once again as he races 4-5 in front. Brixton Town wide out is running home hard. He's going to get second, but Bozam wins the derby with the head on the chest.
In the late 80s, Cummings was facing problems away from the racetrack. The failure to syndicate expensive yearlings resulted in litigation to recover millions of dollars. But for Bart, it was business as usual. Yet again, he let his horses do the talking.
It was never a question of sort of lying down and just letting everyone run over you. It's, you know, the horses were here to do work, there were races to be won, there was still a job to be done.
While the whispers of Bart's demise whistled around the racetracks, the man himself took it all in his stride. And what better way for a trainer to show the world you're not finished?
Kingston Rule in front from the Phantom, diving up on the inside. Kingston Rule and the Phantom from Melbourne. It's Kingston Rule again. Kingston Rule from the Phantom.
The Cup's king, Bart Cummings. 8 Melbourne Cups. How does it feel?
Well, it's better than 1, better than 7. It's terrific, really.
But 11 years in the making since your last Melbourne Cup. Were there ever any doubts that you would win another one?
Well, the more they said I was finished, I said it's better to be a has-been than never been one at all. So I decided I didn't want to like being a has-been, so I had to get busy and get cracking.
Kingston Rule may have broken the Cup drought, but it was a mare from New Zealand who confirmed that Bart was here to stay. She arrived unknown, but just 4 months later, Let's Elope was a household name.
Let's Elope down the outside. Royal Creation and Ivory Way from Let's Elope. It's Royal Creation, Ivory Way and Let's Elope. They hit the line. Hello! Let's Elope on the outside, perhaps.
The remarkable thing about that mare was that, unlike a lot of mares, which had a little bit of a hurried preparation, the more you worked, the more she ate. And I could see then that if they eat the tucker we give them, a lot of horses reject it because of the high protein content. But she just never left a note, and from then on, she never looked back. And the indications that she gave me at that time were quite accurate and correct. And I told the owners he should take some doubles with her, and I don't know if he did or not. I think he did, but Mr. Marks is only a moderate punter, and I think that way he probably enjoyed it a lot longer.
Was burst away. The Foster's Melbourne Cup belongs to the mare. Let's Elope bolts the cup in. Wins by 3 lengths. But it's a Cummings banana. Shiva's Revenge got second. Drops in.
9 Melbourne Cups. Can the Cummings magic be explained?
One opposition trainer said because he used to bring the parish priest and have them blessed, that was the secret. So I said, you better change your religion and try it. I'll tell you, if you can't, it's like the boxer in the ring. No good blessing himself if he can't fight.
Despite his outstanding record in Australia's greatest handicap race, Cummings says authorities should consider more weight-for-age racing.
When horses get to the stage of like Shaftesbury Avenue and Let's Elope at weight for age, it could break their heart racing at big weights over 2 miles, simply because that's the only race that, with that prize money on the calendar. If there was a 1.5 mile weight for age with a similar amount, the best horse would win, and you'd have a wonderful spectacle, and that's what it's all about.
Handicaps, weight for age events, derbies, golden slippers, and that record, 9 Melbourne Cups. What is the key to the Cummings success?
He does the unexpected, and that's why he is where he is today.
He plans so far in advance. You know, horses, even as 2-year-olds, when they weren't natural sprinters, they may have won a race over 1,200 metres or 1,400 metres. You could nearly see the man thinking, this horse could be my next Melbourne Cup runner, or my next Derby horse, then come Melbourne Cup later. I think he knows at a very early age whether he has a prospective cup horse on his hands. Very early age.
I think the challenge of training a stayer brought out something special in Bart. He could time a stayer's preparation right to the minute, and that was the challenge he really liked. And I don't think we can alter the fact that he's one of the greatest trainers we've ever seen.
When I was a young fellow, I never ever thought I was going to be a trainer. And when I became a trainer, when I first started, I wasn't successful. And then I remembered back what my father would do in the same situation that I was in. And unbeknown to you, it's in the back of your mind, even though it happened 5 or 10 years ago, and still registered.
Sometime in the future, Anthony will have the opportunity to complete the family Melbourne Cup treble. And as for the third generation Cummings trainer, what does the future hold?
He's got a good disposition. He's a friendly sort of a fellow. He's well met, and if he applies himself, I'm sure he'll succeed because people like him, and he knows the job pretty well now.
Bart Cummings has never been a pressure cooker trainer. He knows patience. His horses reflect his genius. Invariably, they are relaxed, sensible, and genuine.
I suppose I've been lucky, and I don't know, but I just find it easy to do, which I've never had any problem with. Why, I might have the right, fortunate enough to get the right horses, but I think patience, if you ask me, I suppose I'd have to say being a bit patient with them, and I doubt if anyone feeds them better than I do. There may be someone feed them as good, but they wouldn't feed them any better.
During a career spanning almost 40 years, Bart Cummings has experienced the peaks and hollows. As a trainer, he's got nothing to prove. He's done it all. Is retirement getting closer for the Cup's king?
Never thought about it. It's a long way to go yet.
The odds about winning that 10th Melbourne Cup just tumbled.